Do we have Edwin Sutherland in the room, the note taker? Edwin, you in the room?
Who would like to be backup note taker? Who would like to be primary note taker? There he is. Ah, hi.
Hi, Edwin. Thank you. Right, well, we're at the top of the hour, so we will start. This is the Getting Ready for Energy Efficient Networking Green BOF, and it's a working group forming BOF. And oh, one little thing, please don't get too attached to the name. Sorting out the name of a working group can come as the very last thing. Let's not get wrapped around that axle. It's an IETF meeting. We're halfway through the week, so you should be familiar with this. Understand the participation rules. If you have any doubts about this, you should hold off making any contributions until you've read the material and taken any advice and consultation you need. Please be civil. BOFs in particular can sometimes get a little exciting in the mic queue as people are passionate about the work they want to do. Be courteous, be professional, be polite, and help people to make their points and make their contributions. Meet Echo, as usual. We're using the queue control, so don't come and stand at the mic unless you've put yourself in the queue. Edwin, thank you for volunteering to look after the notes. Everybody else, please help chip in on the page. In particular, if you make comments at the mic, when you go and sit down, just check that they've been recorded correctly. So as I say, using the tool, if you're on site in the room, thank you. This is the joys of being a BOF chair. You get IAB provided coffee. If you're in the room, please use the on-site tool. That's not just so that you can get in the queue, but it's so that we can track who was here and get a proper feeling for the size of the community. If you're, obviously if you're in the room, keep your audio and video off all the time. If you're remote, make sure your audio and video are off until it's your turn to speak. We have an agenda where we've tried to get the proponents to explain what's going on and then leave a really big chunk of time for open discussion at the end. So opportunity for bashing that agenda now, if anybody's got any issues or concerns about what the agenda should look like. Okay, good. So we come to the purpose of the meeting. It's a working group forming BOF. That means the proponents have put together a drafty charter, and their hope is that a working group will be created to work on it. The purpose then of having the BOF is to answer some questions for the AD to help him decide whether to form a working group and how it should be chartered. We need to understand that there's a problem that needs to be solved and it's in scope for the IETF. He has to understand that there's enough people willing to work on the problem, write drafts, review drafts, and so on. It has to be well scoped. We have to work towards understanding what the deliverables are, with a reasonable probability of actually delivering something in a reasonable time frame. We'll get almost an hour at the end of the meeting to talk about these issues and questions. As we go through the agenda, please try to limit your questions on each presentation just for clarification rather than getting into the big discussion that will come later. All right, where's Mahesh? Do come and talk to us, Mahesh. It's like the walk of shame, isn't it?
All right. As I sat down to decide what message I wanted to convey to this group, Adrian sent an email to the proponents of this BOF on the, in quotes, big picture, my words, not Adrian's, on what he wanted to see come out of the BOF. However, I would, with Adrian, your permission, like to share some of those big picture bullet items. And I know, Adrian, you like thinking like a manager, but I come from Silicon Valley, and I wanted the proponents to think like a startup. Add to it, imagine that the proponents of this BOF do not want to take any money from the VCs, so you better be lean and mean. Anyway, I digress. So, bullet item number 1. As part of being lean, the work group, if it gets formed, would want a product in 1 to 2 years. Question is, what is your elevator pitch to the VCs? What are the big pieces of items that you can think of that you can chew off in 1 to 2 years? Item number 2, who is your customer? Who is willing to pay, or in this case, in IETF, who is willing to consume what you produce out of this working group? And why? And whether IETF is a place to get that work done. Number 3, beware of pitfalls. The bright green neon lights in the distance will remind you the lyrics from the song Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. Do not go shopping for possible applications. It's better to have 1 or 2 killer use cases and a list. eMan tried this, and as Bruce Nordman, chair of eMan, said, it got mired into solutions that did not appeal to anyone. So avoid the neon lights. Final point, what is the shortest path to revenue? See the initial charter of green as a stepping stone to what you want to achieve, not the end game. Focus on those short-term goals, and I think we will have a successful work group. Best of luck, and have some fun while trying to form this working group. Thank you.
Thanks, Mahesh. And maybe a couple of additions from the chair still on this. We, of course, agree with the sentiments outlined there. But yeah, maybe the main thing is concrete over fuzzy. Let's do something that we can actually achieve. Also, there's a lot of sustainability-related topics. We don't have to do all of them in one working group. In fact, that's probably harmful. So if we have ideas that are sort of beyond what is being discussed today, let's say something about routing or other designs, we can form other working groups for that at a later time, or even during the IETFs. And we have other places in the IETF for discussion of broader sustainability topics. For instance, the E-Impact program of the IAB discusses many topics that are not yet ready for IETF process. So keep those things in mind, and it would be good to start with something that we can build on. So have some foundations that enable other things to be built on top later. And also, I mean, it's really up to this room or this virtual room to decide what to do. We'll discuss a number of different topics today. It can be useful to think of that set of topics as a list of things, and we don't have to agree on the whole list of things. Let's pick the ones that we actually agree on and run with that, and we can expand later. So with that, I think we're going to go over to the regular program here in the BOF and discuss operators' needs and requirements. So, Luis.
So hello, everyone. This is Luis from Telefónica. Together with Emil, Stefan from Orange, we were in charge of collecting the input from different colleagues on the operator side. So this is a collaborative effort among all the people listed in the front page of the slide. So why this is relevant for the operators and why we are somehow interested in moving this kind of activity forward. So there is clear an industrial concern on what is related to sustainability, energy consumption, and so. You can find a multitude of data about consumption and so. So there are a lot of statistics and figures. We drop one of them on the slide, but the final message is that somehow we are increasing the consumption of energy, and we need to take some action on that front. So in that respect, there are different actions on climate change in different operators-driven organizations like GSMA or NGMN and some others. You can see, for instance, an example on the right side of the slide about some indications from GSMA about the relevance of measuring energy efficiency and so. So we have this overall industrial context, but also in each particular organization, in each particular company, also we have social responsibility missions. I added as well a graph of what is related to Telefónica. So you can see there, a mission about energy consumption, energy, the usage of renewable energy, the value chain, and so on and so far. And a final part of this that is not reflected in the slide because of a format problem is about regulation. Also, we have mandates in the different countries where we operate, and regulations are also going in this direction of imposing ways of making a responsible usage of the energy, reporting the usage of energy, and so on and so far. In the case of Europe, for instance, there will be a European Green Deal, and operators in Europe will be subject to that, and I assume that in other geographies will be the same. So with that, we were discussing with the other colleagues in the operators side what could be considerations to bring here to the BOF so that it can serve as input. So as you saw before, there are inputs from so many people, so many organizations from different geographies. So in some cases, the inputs are more specific, more concrete. In some others are a little bit more vague. But basically take it as an input of what are the concerns from the operator side in this respect. So with that, we are structuring in operation considerations, so attending to the cycle of observability, analysis, observability of the consumption, let's say, analysis of the data, and then control and management based on that analysis previously performed. And also we will cover some considerations before operation, so how much carbon is before operation in our networks. Important to take into consideration as well is the accuracy of the data that we could play with. At the end, the data is expected to be used for taking decisions, so accuracy could be a dimension as well that we need somehow to take into consideration. So I will go through the in-operation part, and starting with observability. Some of the inputs collected are, well, I will go quickly one by one. So first one was about having more granular information. The more granular information that we have, the better. So having information per line, per port, per card. So trying to collect as much as we can from the devices, from the network elements. Also improvement of the metering solutions. So having this granularity, interoperability, ways of exposing the information, and so on and so far. As well, being able to get information without needing instrumentation connected to the infrastructure. So leveraging on sensors in such a way that the equipment can provide that information automatically. And then having capabilities for triggering alarms so that somehow we can be aware of when we are situations where we are exceeding some foreseen consumption. That would be related to observability. Some other considerations related to the analysis of the data are listed here. So for instance, the common definition of energy efficiency. So having a common ground, a common language for all of us to understand what we are talking about when we refer to energy efficiency. Having as well a common methodology. So in such a way that we can fairly compare consumption between different implementations, between different network scenarios, between different architectures. Also important how to provide accurate figures. So what is the specific context of the measurement in terms of the period, the time of period that we use for having that measurement, the location, the traffic conditions, and so on and so far. Also, the possibility of considering databases so that we can accumulate measurements that could be used later on for taking decisions. An example of that could be large data transfer. So maybe we can accommodate data transfer according to the historical consumption and the expected consumption, the prediction. And then also important, the multi-layer analysis. So maybe not stay only at one single layer, but consider multiple layers in the network as we have today in the architecture. An example would be the IP plus the IP layer on top of the optical layer. Then moving to the control and management inputs, some idea, some interest more rather than ideas. Some interest that we would have to consider is to have devices with elastic power consumption so that we can, the consumption could be accommodated according to the traffic that is being delivered. Supporting network-wide energy saving and optimization functions, but also network-wide control of the energy optimization. So having these capabilities, but also having APIs that can activate these capabilities. Advanced sleep mode in the devices so that we also can selectively switch off parts according to the traffic demand in a specific time. Also ability of steering traffic based on power savings. So applying this computation of paths according to or steering decisions according to the consumption status. Comparison of decision versus optimal case. So in some cases that we will have limitations for going to the optimal, but it will be interesting to understand what is the difference between the optimality case, also for probably going to more simplistic decisions and not overcomplicating the decisions. And finally, synchronous query support. So once we activate some identification of a given path, for instance, so refer to that selection, maybe if we need to scale the path and so on and so forth. So these were in operation aspects, as said, for observability, analysis, and control and management. But there are other aspects that also could be or are of interest, definitely. And this could apply in some cases to in operation stage, but also in some other cases to before operation stage. For instance, the inventory, having an inventory of all the power components of devices, the racks. So it's not only the network equipment, but also how the racks are being fit with the energy, and so optimization and control capabilities, nominal condition usage, and so on and so forth. Additionally to that, the possibility of optimizing the overall CO2 footprint. So this is in relation with the energy mix that could fit the different point of presence, the different sites, so that it can help to take decisions at the time of operating the network, but also in other circumstances, like for instance, migrating one POP from one side, migrating the services, let's say, from one side to another side, from one POP to another POP. Support both gas and gas emission and energy units. Considerations in general about sustainability. Maybe this is a little bit back, but it goes in the direction of the usage of clean energy, the gas emission, maybe also the supply chain and these kind of things. Important as well, the interaction with other domains, other technological domains. We are not alone in the network, so we are coexisting with data centers. We are coexisting with radio access networks. So having minds of somehow exposing information or even offering that APIs that I mentioned before for interacting with the different technological domains. Accounting of the legacy install base, so that we also can take into account the gas emissions, the energy consumption of this legacy. tracking of the device network consumption before the operation and in operation probably could be different, that part. And also a more generic comment about planning and architecture. Also, there could be a chance of optimizing architectures and doing a better planning, maybe with this idea of identifying proper sites according to the energy mix and these kind of things. So the very last slide is about an exercise that was provided by the colleagues from China Mobile as an example of what are the kind of topics that they are looking at. And as you can see, they are looking at different levels. For instance, chip level, with a potential point here would be the dynamically shutdown of the shortest link, so we can adapt to the speed of the link according to the traffic demand. That could be a case. A board level, for instance, the possibility of shutting down cards. At device level, the possibility of having or dynamically adjusting the consumption, for instance, and network level, maybe the liquid cooling. So different actions, different fronts that could be subject of analysis in the working group, if Untitled Chapter. And that was my last slide. So if there are comments.
Thank you. And we do take clarifying questions if there's any, but if not, we will just move on.
We have Jim. Go ahead, Jim.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, that's good.
Jim Wang from China Mobile. The presentation is excellent, and I have a question. In the second slide, the use of clean or renewable energy was mentioned. Is it possible to consider functions related to monitor clean or renewable energy in green? For example, the monitoring of green or renewable energy usage. Thank you.
Yeah, the topic of the renewable energy is somehow hidden in this idea of CO2 footprint. So probably we could have different mix of energy in different sites. So we need a potential way to follow that direction would be to associate the similar energy mix that we have in the point on presence, associate that to the energy mix that is feeding the element, the network element, the device. So somehow it's considering this CO2 footprint comment.
Thank you. Thanks, Luis. This is excellent. Thank you very much for gathering this and all the operator stuff. The question I had is have you had a chance to think about priorities for these things? There's a lot of stuff in there that kind of came up. Is there some priorities and timelines that you talk about? That it's fine. The answer is no, but I kind of wanted to ask that question if you did.
Yeah, the short answer is no. This will require probably more work because every operator probably will have different priorities. So it requires more discussion for sure.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Tony Lee. I have 5 minutes to talk about 5 slides. I'm going to talk really fast. Please keep up. Next slide. This is power utilization of high-end fixed router. As you can see, the NPUs consume the most amount of power. In this particular instance, the NPUs are 41%, optics are about 26%, and the fabric is 11%. The key point here, the NPUs are the dominant factor. If you're not optimizing the NPUs, you're not playing it right. Next slide, please. This also takes a look at similar figures for high-end modular routers. These are ones that have multiple line cards in them. As you can see, the line cards consume 49%, 51% of the power. That's where the power goes. Optics, 18 to 22%. The fabric is non-trivial, 18 to 19%, but again, it's a distant third. The key point I also wanted to make here, power utilization is very much a function of traffic volume and distribution. Sending big packets is different than sending small packets. Sending a lot of traffic is very different than sending no traffic. Ambient temperature also makes a big difference. If the ambient temperature is high, the fans have to work a lot harder. That draws more power. Altitude also counts. If you're in Denver, your router is going to consume more power than if you were in Miami. If you're trying to make a comparison between two routers, you must control all of the same variables to ensure you're making an apples to apples comparison. Your salesperson will be very, very happy to give you a best case number and compare it to the competitor's worst case number. Next slide, please. Looking at the line card, again, the line card is completely dominated by NPUs. 76% of the power is going on a line card is going direct to the NPUs. Another 4% of that is the memory associated with those NPUs. So that is the key thing to turn off. Next slide. This graph shows the effect of traffic load. This is back on the fixed form factor system. And as you can see, at zero load, that system is consuming 635 watts of power just for the NPUs. As those NPUs are loaded, the power consumption ramps up, and that only grows by 95 watts. Again, if you're trying to optimize, try to optimize out the 635 watts. Yes, you can play games, but you're only going to optimize the 95 watts by doing routing games. So think hard about how to turn off NPUs. That's our first order of business. Next slide. I was asked to talk about reporting. Right now, the number one way we report about power, numbers on a data sheet. That is what people ask for because they care mostly about provisioning. The second, there's always comments about what actual typical utilization is. That usually goes through our support channels, talking to your salesperson. We have not implemented EMAN. Sorry, don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings, but it just simply hasn't been requested by the customer base. Our recommendation is to go straight to Yang, and let's not mess around. Thank you very much. Questions?
Question? Hi, Tony.
Jeff.
Jeff, NVIDIA, what optics did you use to measure this?
There were a variety of optics used here. Obviously, you can slant the numbers any which way by choosing your optics.
So ZR Plus uses 23 watt piece. So if you populate 48 of those in line cards, suddenly you are much over your NPU, isn't it?
Yes, there are line cards that have power limits, so you have to work within those power limits. And again, you have to be careful which optics you're choosing. If you're doing everything with ZR, you might have a problem.
So practically, I think it would be useful to either normalize optics across ranges, or the power consumption is very different, right?
If you're trying to make an apples to apples comparison, yes, you need to optimize and normalize the optics.
Thank you.
Hi, Curtis. I was just at an NSF workshop on sustainability a little while ago, and I think one of the things I got out of that was these kind of operational power usages are dominated by the manufacturing costs in terms of total lifespan for this, something like 90-10, 90% of it being the manufacturing, 10% of it being the runtime things. Should this be a focus? Like it seems like even then we're at like 42% as the NPUs, which you cut that down and it's not going to have that large of an impact on the overall power budget. And then in that consideration of the manufacturing costs as well.
So these slides do not include the manufacturing cost. This is just operational cost.
But I mean, is that like what the greening group should be working on? Is this like?
It's not very practical. Folks who want to deploy routers are going to deploy them. IETF doesn't get to have a lot of say over manufacturing.
For your breakdown numbers, do you have the reference of your measurement? I mean, methodology. What's the methodology you have used for the breakdown of the energy? Is it based on what? Can we have a look at this? Do you have a reference?
I can only disclose what's on these slides.
Okay, so we don't know if it's a ground truth or if it's made up.
I can only disclose what's on these slides. I'm sorry.
So, queue closed.
Yeah, we will have some opportunity for a broader discussion later, and so clarifying questions only. Kapiraj?
Hello, can you hear me? This is Kaviraj Sethi. We represent Cisco Catalyst Switching BU. I have Andrew Liu with me, who is a part of my sustainability journey here. So today we will be covering how our switching and routing devices are modeled to export the energy data, power and energy data, and the reporting. Can I go to the next slide, please? So we identified the key interfaces where it is important to measure the power. So we have three interfaces where the power comes into the system from the utility company, that is a power input to the system through PSU in, and what power goes to the system as PSU out to the system. And the third interface where we are interested in is how much power switches are providing to the connected device. Those are PoE devices, power over Ethernet devices. So these three interfaces cover the entire thing to present it in a broader form, and the per site or per switch or per port basis, how much power is being consumed by these devices. And there is an interface that we define across all the portfolio in the enterprise view, the NetConf and Yang models, which is proprietary to Cisco as of now. And we have our CLIs, how to present those data. So our main focus here is to measure the accuracy and the presentation and the units, how we present to the external interface, and the standardization of the APIs and CLIs, how we report the data to the third-party application or our own controller like DNAC and Meraki dashboards. Next slide, please. At power supply input and output, we collect the voltage and current coming to the system from a AC source or a DC source, and the output voltage, current, and power going to the system, those are primarily DC. And what is the efficiency factor of the power supply unit? And the next intersection for the switch, how much power is allocated for the device at any given time to draw the maximum power, that's a power budget, and how much is the current snapshot of the power being consumed by the device, how much is the peak power over the time of the system staying up, and when you go to reload or reset, what is the minimum power it draws. And there is energy accumulation as a metering at the device level, where we store the energy collected over time for a defined period of time at the system, and the start time of the energy metering, and what was the last update time of that energy meter. Similarly, in the third column, we have PoE power parameters, where we monitor, so per total power allocation per port, that's a budgeted power, and what is the aggregated budget allocated for all the PoE devices across the system, and how much each PoE device draws when they are operational, and the aggregated sum of all the power for all the ports that is connected. And again, we have energy metering done per port basis in the system level for a defined time, which is configurable. And it is per port, and we have also start time per port and the last update meter time per port. All these data are collected and stored and exported through API, standard API, so that any application and dashboard can have entire visibility up to the granularity to the system and ports. Next slide, please.
And as someone from the audience has already pointed out, that when it comes to energy consumption, the greenness of energy is actually not the same. 1 kilowatt consumed at night in Ohio is different from 1 kilowatt hour consumed in California during the day, right? So it's important for us to actually at a controller level to provide additional context to the energy consumption that we have observed over the internet, over our network. So in Catalyst Center, we actually have standardized on a few different metrics. That's energy, overall energy consumption measured in kilowatt hours, the estimated cost, the estimated emission, and also energy intensity, as well as energy mix of your local grid. We're working with third-party data vendors to actually collect this for the local grid. And of course, we offer mechanisms for customers who are maybe getting their energy from different sources or from their own sources to actually help to actually track that separately. That concludes our presentation. Thank you very much for your time. We'd like to open for questions.
Thank you. And just to sort of highlight these two presentations, they were examples that we picked that we thought illustrates nicely, what kind of issues and power consumption and reporting aspects there are. Different cases. And if we were to pick some other situation, let's say cloud systems or mobile networks, you would again get very interesting numbers and interesting situations, but different from these. And so specific cases, perhaps specific even to the particular products and companies, but nevertheless, we have these kinds of issues across the ecosystem. Benoit, you're up next.
Thank you. So we discussed, at least EMAN was mentioned, and I want to provide feedback on the EMAN working group. So this is joint work with the BOF proponent and myself. So EMAN is a concluded working group. It happened at 2014-15. It stands for energy management. We created a couple of RFCs in there. The first one about an entity MIP version 4. I'm going to explain why. The next one is a set of requirements for energy management. A disclaimer on this. So I was part of EMAN as an author, then chair, and even some AD at some point in time. So I saw my job as trying to structure the discussion. So the document we wrote there is simply taking the requirements from EMAN at the time and trying to see what are the requirements these days. This is the diff that you see at the bottom of the slides there. The next RFC 7326 is an energy management framework. Then you will see a series of MIPs, monitoring and control of power energy, object contexts, and battery. So I'm going to cover some of these, right? And in the end, the applicability statement. So from the charter, it said, power and energy monitoring, power states, power control, potential power state transitions. The framework will focus on energy management for IP-based network equipment. At that time, we were thinking about routers, switches, but also the host, the PC, the camera, etc. From the requirement, it says accounting for total power received and provided by an entity or network over service. And we were kind of evasive on the entity thing. So this is anything that you would like to report power on. I'm going to come back to that, but the focus was, as I mentioned, host PC servers, switches, a lot of focus on PoE, because you could control power of what we attach, a camera, a phone, etc. A lot of focus on battery management, but no HVAC, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning, except if done by an IP gateway. High-level points. So MIPS, right? Read-write MIPS. So we know the complexity of creating those MIPS, implementing those MIPS. So I'll come back to that, but not young too early. In 2014, that's why I mentioned the date before, the IESG had this statement about the working group should stop doing read-write MIP modules. It was about the same time that we produced our work. So at that time, we said, okay, we said with MIP, we're going to continue with MIP. So we had the idea already to control power states. High-level points. This framework contains an information model. If you know me, I don't like too much information model because I can't do automation, but in this case, it might be a good thing. If you believe this information is good enough, we might be creating Yang out of that. Or if you want to go from the MIP to Yang, do the translation, the mapping, if this is what this working group wants to do. I want to come back on the entity MIP. Why did we have the entity MIP in the EMAN working group? Simply because we added a single field, the UUID. If you know the entity MIP, there is an ID which is local to the box for a line card, for interface. But now if you want to take care of the energy globally, maybe you need to have a UUID, which is unique for the entire network. It might be easier. This is the same discussion we're having these days with Yang. I need to have unique IDs to do the inventory in IV, to the digital map in Nmap. So we could be taking the one from the hardware Yang module or the one from the topology module with network ID, with link ID, with node ID, etc. The context MIP module, we were foreseeing at the time that we could control an entire network, and depending on the role, on the importance, on a keyword, we could just set the power control, of all the lights off because it's a day off, or the IP phones coming up at 7 a.m. in the morning, thing like that. We foresaw this. Now, we had at the time, there were competing standards on how to have power sets. There was one about IEEE, one for the host in the MTF, and we were thinking how to apply this to networking. So what we did is that we had the list on the right that was somehow, the starting from the IEEE and adding some of the MTF one. One thing I want to stress is if you go on the right-hand side, the EMAN one from the IANA, from let's say 7 to 11, we don't specify this is the feature of, green routing or green source, whatever. They are generic. It means that we foresaw that at some point in time, for whatever feature you want to have, with a mapping to one of those power states, as opposed to create a new power state for every single new feature that you might want to have, proprietary or not. Something I want to stress, which I have not seen discussed so far, is that typically you have some entities that might be controlling the power state from other entities, typically PoE, right? You have a port, you provide power over Ethernet to something else, which might have power states, right? So the power distribution view is different than the networking view that we have. So that's why we had to introduce the notion of power interface as a consequence. And that's why we had to introduce the relationships over there, like powered by, powering, metered by, metering, aggregating, and things like this. So I've not seen that working, discussed here. Think about the use cases if you need this in this working group, right? But sooner or later, you might be facing those issues. A smart PDU for data center, same thing. Observation. So I believe that some of the definition concepts might still be applicable here. Now, I was asked on a regular basis, is EMAN a success? Tony mentioned no request for EMAN. I would agree for that. I would agree with that. Now, there are implementation. There is one at Cisco. You'll have to ask Cisco where status is, and it's called EnergyWise. We had some smart PDU vendors involved there. Now, my view of all this is that, first of all, it was not such a success because the energy crisis did not last too long at that point in time. So the interest was there heavily to do monitoring. And then because the energy cost went down, people say, oh yeah, maybe not a high priority to control things. It might be different this time. So we might have the same, some of the same requirements, but with some different incentive. Then I went, so this is my view, I went to some operators and I asked them, okay, so we could, for example, shut down a line card if there is no traffic. And we've seen the numbers from Tony, right? But then there was like, oh, so you ask me to pay for an expensive secondary line card that you want to be off, and it takes 30 seconds to boot. So I have an issue with the SLA. I pay for that, but right now I can't have redundancy. Then we went into the campus, and we were thinking to We could have algorithms to shut down ports based on the traffic, but a port was like 10 watts. So is this worth it, all of this? So in the end, the control aspect of it was not interesting. And one more trend that we saw is that there was a lot of local energy management policy. Let's say the battery were optimized by themselves. The fan of the water, same thing. Some of the components were like not controlled by a controller, but controlled directly with optimization. And obviously the famous read-write MIPS. So if you want to look at the slides, I've been helping the proponent having open issues regarding the requirements of EMAN and what they want to do. And this is my last slide. So what EMAN did not cover? Obviously Yang, we mentioned that, right? But I think that the question from the AD is there more to it than just a Yang mapping or Yang creation? What we did not discuss really, it's energy efficient management for a definition of it, right? Carlos mentioned the list, efficient how? We did not have like network-wide matrix, such as we have in power usage effectiveness in data center, thing like that. We were not thinking about some of the use cases today. I think Emil is going to speak about that, or at least it's in a draft, which is the eco-design. So if I want to summarize the message, I was discussing with someone who gave me this feedback, and I thought it was a kind of good summary of intention of why I'm here, is that EMAN has done some good things, not everything, and has some implementation. But it's not a complete success or not a success, but we can learn from that. And I think that is the main message here. Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions, or shall we move to Quinn?
Hello, this is Qing Wu. Actually, I want to introduce on behalf of the Green Ball proponents. So what the proponents think working group should do. So as we know, power management has widely adopted by industrial vertical like a power grid, which can manage thousands of IoT devices and connect sensor data like temperature, humidity data. However, power management for industrial vertical is not our focus today. We more target to network operator to manage a larger scale mobile network, data center network, backbone network. With explosive growth of network traffic and rapid development of network technologies such as 5G, AI, computing. So network capacity and the site is continuing to increase, and the AI computing network infrastructure consume much more energy. So which drive tremendous growth of equipment energy consumption cost. In the meanwhile, large proportion of vast amount of the energy to be consumed is unnecessarily wasted. Therefore, more and more network operators seeking for the automation tools solution to better assess and control energy consumption for the whole network. So the targeted network device and device component must be the one to consume most of the energy. For example, the pure network elements in the radio network or mobile network. It also can be the power distribution unit combined with switch server in data center network. And typical use cases is we can provide energy consumption heat map to better understand where to consume so much energy. We also can measure energy efficiency ratio, power usage effectiveness for various different type of network. However, the power consumption monitoring on network device is not sufficient, since monitoring only tell you how much power are consumed, but doesn't tell you when and where, why to consume so much energy. And what measure we can take to reduce this energy consumption. Therefore, to tackle this challenge, energy efficiency management has already become the trend, and which allow network operator to optimize energy usage based on discovered capability. In the meanwhile, to improve overall network utilization. Second slide. Yeah, to support energy efficiency, observability and management, we believe actually at least 4 functionalities should be supported. Function number 1, capability identity inventory discovery, which allow network operator to discover what capability can be supported by specific network device with specific identity. Function number 2, power consumption monitoring. In addition to report basic energy consumption, we also care about time-based, location-based energy consumption measurement. Function number 3, energy efficiency monitoring, which allow network operator to use new metric to measure energy efficiency, and also looking for the balance between the power consumption and network performance. Function number 3, optimization and control, which allow network operator to use discovered capability to optimize energy usage in relation to support dynamic energy saving within the network device. So let's deep dive into these 4 basic functionality. As for the capability identity inventory discovery, first we should acknowledge the dependency relationship between the thing, component, device, network is complex. For example, there's dependency relationship among a set of components. You cannot tune component X because Y depend on it and for function F. Also, there's some power relationship across device. For example, which network device using which power interface to provide the power, and which network device to consume power, which power source will be used, whether it's solar energy or wind energy. And the virtualization allow multiple instances of component, which really compound to describe the relationship between the things, component, device. Therefore, it's very important to really discover this complex relationship and associated capability. This capability can be broken down to 3 categories. For example, power interface static capability. Typical example is nominal voltage, power settings supported by power interface. Second category is component-specific capability. For example, we have port component, we have fan component. Fan component, support the speed adjustment. Port can be on/off to switch to save the power. And for component-independent capability, for example, we support various different number of the power state. In some cases, we support just the 2 power state on/off. In some cases, we support 4 power state on/off, sleep, and backup. Another example is we allow network device to support either local management or network-wide management. As for power consumption monitoring, in addition basic power consumption at the component level, device level, we also need to support consumption for specific time period. For example, dynamic energy consumption every day, every week. And also we can expose energy consumption at the network level. Typical metric, for example, power usage effectiveness, we call the PUE. And we also have some other metric like cooling load factor, power load factor. Take a PUE example, which can be determined by the energy enter into the data center by the energy to run the IT device like a switch, router. Another example is power gain, actually, which can be determined by the actual power consumption by the maximum power consumption. As for the energy efficiency monitoring, we think we must support 2 basic metric. First is energy proportion. Typical example is we can report the percentage of power consumed by each component like a NPU. We also can report the percentage of power consumed by radio network, data center network. Second metric we should care about is monitor the trade-off between the performance and the power, which can be measured using 2 typical metrics like measure using the data traffic per unit of energy consumption, or we can measure using like a carbon emission or network operation divided by total data traffic. And for energy efficient ratio is determined by a set of factors, for example, maximum throughput, traffic load. And therefore, it's also important to monitor this factor change. In case of energy saving, can be switch on off, and you also need to care about the maximum wake up time and sleep time, and measure and report it. As for optimization and control, and we can support, network-wide optimization and local management. And the network-wide optimization only will be used at the beginning or at the end of the session, while the local management will be used at the most of the time. The typical example of local management is dynamic energy saving. For example, we can shut down unused line card. We can adjust the number of the service bars and based on the traffic load change. And to fulfill all these requirements, we think data model technology should be used. Two options we have: either use the MIB model or we use the young data model. MIB has been developed for decades, good at monitoring, but has limitation for the control functionality. Another is, has limitation to define complex type and concentrate for correlation mapping between various different type of data. But the Young doesn't have such a limitation. Young already have a good ecosystem for network management automation, which has already been widely adopted by various different SDO and also open source project. Integration with OSS and SDN controller is much easier. And so what a young data model design look like? We can have two-level young data model. Network level model, we can actually extend from network inventory model and network topology model to support the capability exposure and dynamic metric monitoring. We also can extend the network inventory model and network topology model to describe a dependency relationship between the component, device, and the networker. And the control net device level model, in addition to capability, exposure, dynamic metric monitoring, we also can support configuration for optimization. And to better understanding how to position or where to position this device level model, network level model, the framework is required. So we can specify, three typical, function component: discovery, monitoring, and control. And at the device level, network level, we also can specify, function requirements corresponding to these three typical function component. We also can explore how network level metric static capability can be used in this framework. And in addition, we can, differentiate the energy efficiency management function at the device level and control level. At the control level, you can connect, compute, and aggregate the power and energy information derived a set of network metric. And also, you can support incremental deployment to report energy consumption from the legacy device using legacy interface, for example, web interface, CLI interface. One open question is whether we should establish metadata database, specify metadata format. One example we can introduce like carbon intensity energy KPI, which already, the method specified in the I2D documents and can be generated by the controller exposed to the operator, allow operator to, look up the carbon information based on the location. To summarize what we have discussed, that energy efficiency observability is critical to the network operator. With the young data model automation technology, energy efficiency management can be easily realized, which optimize energy saving functionality based on discover functionality and also network performance requirements. In addition, actually, energy efficiency management can also report power source using young data model to indicate the emission factor for various different the power supply, for example, solar power and wind power. Some other topic we haven't, reached agreement, whether it is in the scope or out of scope, for example, life cycle, embedded carbon, and also some other topic. Welcome your input. Thanks for listening. Hi, Jim.
Clarifying questions?
Hisham, where are you? Speak.
Thanks for the presentation. Will the energy efficiency metrics or KPIs standardized in this new working group, or it will be standardized somewhere else?
I cannot hear clearly.
Yeah, the energy efficiency KPIs or metrics, will those be standardized in the new green working group, or they will be standardized somewhere else?
He's asking if the metrics would be defined in this working group or somewhere else. And the proposal here in front of us is that we would standardize some of these metrics here.
Yeah, energy efficiency metric actually already some other SDO they define some methodology method. Actually, we can use this kind of existing method. Also, some other like a benchmarking working group, they work on power benchmarking. Actually, they can help provide foundation for this kind of work. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Jing Wang.
Okay. In the fifth slide,
which one? Fifth?
Yeah. Okay. Part 2. Okay. It's mentioned that it's primarily using the data traffic per unit of energy consumption ratio across the network. So I have a question. The equipment that monitors energy consumption needs to generate traffic and energy consumption while performing energy consumption monitoring. So when calculating the energy efficiency of the entire network, should this energy consumption be included in the energy consumption across the whole network?
So what is your question?
The equipment that monitors energy consumption also generate energy consumption. Should it be include energy consumption across whole network?
He's asking if the energy consumption should be across the whole network also, or just devices.
Yeah, actually, for energy efficiency, we looking at some network level metric. So not just look at some device level. Actually, we consider the whole network, and there's some as SDO cover define some methodology for this. You can take a look at that. For device level, actually, they also they actually cover both device level and network level. And the device level is basis, and also they extend to support a network level, metric. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Dan Bogdanovic. The energy industry, to measure energy efficiency, is using a term called negawatts, N as in November. And this is how they are measuring what is the reduction in energy use by applying new mechanisms to save, to be more energy efficient. And we as a community, especially at the network level, with the help of the vendors who can provide us information on the device level, can come up with metrics how much energy savings could be achieved. So we have to have the vendor information, as well then how we could calculate that based on the network level. One thing that I'm concerned is that we are all trying to add carbon savings into this. The biggest problem is we have no idea what energy sources the energy providers are using. I went recently to a energy, it was about energy grid optimization presentation, and they have multiple different energy sources that are being used, and they are ramping the production up and down depending on the demand, but not just in particular area. So you can have very green energy at the same time of the day in one area and very dirty level of energy in the other area. And you have no idea which one you're using as the end user. There are some mechanisms that they're saying, oh, I can be 100% green user, and then they will be offsetting it this way and that way. But try to provide any carbon calculations by us would be a very hard task to achieve. But trying to do and comply our energy efficiency metrics, we should be then looking into what the energy sector is doing. And number one thing, what they're doing today is called megawatts.
Yeah, to respond to Dan's comments, actually, I think first the goal is, really looking for energy efficiency and looking for the balance between the power consumption and the network performance. So this goal really can encourage the network operator to use maybe the green energy. Actually, by the mechanism or model we develop, is independent whether you use green energy or regular energy. And the second point is, in data center network for operator, they manage the data center. Usually they consider use some, the green energy or some regular energy. So they decide the percentage of this green energy and also give the weight for each, the power source, so they can do such some kind of calculation. And there's some IEC ISO document to provide this kind of, mathematical formula to calculate this kind of metric. But yeah, I understand your concern. Definitely, we should more focus on the basic what we can produce. We can focus on metric and young data model and produce the young model the data. Actually, this can be leveraged by other initiative or industry. They can build on top of it. Yeah.
Well, my only message was here that we should use energy efficiency metrics that are used by the industry in general and not invent our own units for that.
Fully agree.
Thank you. That's a good point. Why don't we move on and let Marisol come and talk to us about the charter proposal.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me.
All good?
All good. Can you hear me? Do you hear me on the
Yes,
on the
we
audio?
hear you well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, basically, I will go through the charter, what we have been collecting as feedback, and I have been just sharing the GitHub repository where we have been tracking on the issues that has been discussed on the mailer, right, on the green buff, and this was starting at the beginning of May. I will skip the background and motivation because we have been hearing for an hour already what is the motivation of the operators and the background on what it has been done as well in IETF around energy. And I will go directly to the purpose of the what we want to propose as part of the Green Working Group with the other proponents and what we have been listening in the mailer. Basically, the Green Working Group is dedicated to developing energy efficiency metrics, as we have been discussing, methods for measuring energy consumption and in networking devices, and optimization on that energy efficiency across the networks. We are encouraging to have these deliverables in a short term. We have been talking about 1-2 years, and we are concerned about this time as we might leave other work for other working groups or for other focus. But the problematic of the energy it is now, and if there are standards out of this working group, they should be there as soon as possible, right? And the idea for the short-term deliverables is to define terms and definitions for the energy efficiency metrics that we are going to care, reducing what it has been done in other RFCs, develop the YAM models for measuring, reporting, and controlling energy usage per component, per device, and per network levels, and create as well the framework for collecting and using energy consumption metrics, including guidance for legacy devices. Here, it has been a debate, and probably it will be a discussion for later as well, about the framework that it will cover the use cases for the energy efficiency metrics, considering that correlation that needs to be done with external sources that might not be directly coming from networked devices. The scope of the work, if we can go to the next slide, basically in scope is establishing common terminology and metric definition for energy efficiency, the YAN data models for network lifecycle management, including monitoring and optimization of the energy use, and this framework for energy metrics collection to support the efficiency metrics that we might relate to. Out of the scope of this specific working group, not that is not part of the interest, but probably because of this short-term scope, is routing protocols and algorithms considering energy factors, benchmarking, carbon accounting, impact of the energy on the service quality, regulatory and compliance issues that are part of other discussions, other forums as well, and well, cross-domain trust issues regarding measurements. Going to the next slide. The work items that has been determined for this work is this informational architecture document for the energy efficiency network management, propose a standard document for the YAN data models that will relate to the energy efficiency metrics as well, with all the attributes that might be considered, and an informational model, document covering the framework for the collection and the aggregation rate and correlation of this energy metrics composition. The collaboration, it is also important to consider other working groups in IETF, and we have been highlighting the work ongoing in ID with the inventory from the operations in the OPSA working group and the NetMod working group. Other groups that are looking into the standardization of metrics and measurements are the benchmarking, the BMVWG, and IPPM. There are other research groups. We understand that there are a lot of research that still is ongoing and needs to be in place as well. There is work already presented around energy on the PAN-RG and NMRG. And we are collaborating as well, and there are cross discussions with the impact program, right, and other industry stakeholders. The milestones that we have been defined in the next slide, we have been proposing to have, per quarter, different milestones. For the first one in the last quarter of this year, the standardization of the terminology for energy use and efficiency. For the second quarter of 2025, just the publishing the YAN models for the metrics, following the framework, and the last one more practical, demonstrating the YAN model implementation. There are also highlighting dependencies and liaisons, and we have been, there are people in the group working with ITU, being part of other SDOs, and well, this is all relevant, and we understand that there is a partnership to be done as well with research and with practical implementation as an outcome. With that, we open it for questions.
Thank you, Marisol. And I think we'll move to the discussion section. But before that, we're going to go over a couple of reminders on how we think we should be conducting this discussion part, and why we are doing it, or what we're trying to do.
Yeah, so not to take too much time out of the discussion here, we're running a bit late already. BOFs are often held in the context of 5434 that lists a number of points that the proponent should be aiming at. I think we've kind of already talked through these, but but it's just worth reading or thinking about these as we go forward, and we'll be asking some questions in the wrap-up that relate to it. Specifically, we need to be sure that we understand what it is the proponents are proposing to work on, and scope that with, is that what we want to do as well, or is there some overlap, some subset, and is there an operational need? Are we clear what's in and out of scope? We need to make the decision, is this IETF work, or does it belong somewhere else, open source, other SDO? Does it go in an existing working group, and how does it relate to other working groups? I think Yari said right at the top that there's the possibility of trying to put all sustainability into one working group, and we need to try to look at this as building blocks and small steps towards where we want to get to, rather than boiling the ocean in the first go. So look at what's foundational and what's for the future. And then finally, do we have clear deliverables and work items? Can we distinguish between the things we must do straight off and the things that we could live without for now but want to do later? In other words, can we set ourselves some milestones that are useful yet achievable within 18 months?
Yeah, and just sort of a reminder, I guess people have Marisol's charter fresh in their minds, but just a listing of things that we sort of at the high level see here. So it's about terms, the measurement mechanism, sort of Youngification of E-man, plus maybe extending that in some fashion, plus the control possibilities and a framework. So just keep that in mind, that this is roughly what we're talking about, and we could add or subtract at least as you please. Next slide. And maybe we'll just leave this slide on here and go to the discussion, but we have some goals for this and some non-goals. We're not here to tweak the details of the solutions, for instance, and we should also leave some room for post-BOF tweaking of charters and so on, and the actual working group work. So with that, opening the queues for discussion. Are we doing the right thing? Are we trying to do too much, too little? Please comment.
Dan, go for it.
I was fast on the finger. Yeah. Hi, Dan Bogdanovic. So the customers are asking the vendors to provide energy measurements because the data center operators, network operators can get financial incentives from their governments in case they can reduce their energy consumption. So there is a clear ask by the industry to provide them metrics that they could use for economical benefits. That is how I see it being the main driver. I just checked back, and there are about 9 established metrics that are being currently used to measure the energy efficiency that is relevant to us, to our sector. And a lot of that, we would need vendors to support it, and that we get from the vendor a pretty unified unit system that we could use to get on a network scale. So there is demand by the market. Usually when there is a demand by the market, the company executives are willing to do the work and invest resources into it that would then reflect itself to the people participating in the working group. My only concern is that we would not reinvent the wheel and that we would follow some of the established metrics that have been done by the industry. So to summarize, I fully support creation of the working group and would be more than willing to provide comments, write drafts, and be a participant in the working group.
Thank you, Dean. And then Gen.
Okay. So just now I saw from the slide that this impact of energy efficiency on service quality is out of scope. So I think it's as important as performance metrics. So the operators definitely will need this service impact metrics along with the performance metrics to say the impact of energy efficiency. So will we consider this in the future in this scope of the green working group? Thank you.
Thank you. Alexander?
Yes, I wanted to comment on the can you hear me?
Yes, keep going.
Okay. Yeah, so I wanted to comment on the point that Yari raised regarding if we need a separate venue for this or if we could use existing venues. So my point of view is actually we tried actually in the past going to other working groups that could also be landing spots, but it has always proven hard actually to do so, because I think the critical interest and the critical mass for interest is typically not in these other forums. I think it is basically more in the e-impact and green, basically the interest here. So I just wanted to express my support formation of this working group. I do think this is needed as a landing spot for work on the area of sustainability.
Thank you. Robert.
Hi. So I was slightly guilty of encouraging the proponents to come along and try and start a working group and to have a BOF potentially. And the reason I did that was because when I was an AD, now I've released, I saw that there was various green-related drafts happening in various places, and they were struggling to get traction because they weren't really in scope or in charge of any of those working groups. And recharging those working groups to cover those might have been possible, but it would have detracted from the core scope and aims for those working groups in terms of what they're working for. So I saw these various drafts happening, and there was no great home for where they should go. And different drafts were happening in different places. So I was one of the people who were encouraging to say, no, let's try and create a working group to bring some of the short-term work together that we can do in a short time frame. We know what we need to do and get it done. So I think from that perspective, I would like to see this working created. I think it'd be a good thing to say. Does this stuff matter? I think it clearly does. I think we know that the world is suffering from using too much energy, and I think anything that we can do to make realistic and practical steps to reduce that, I think is beneficial. So I think that there's a demand from doing that. I think that makes sense. Is the IETF a good place? I believe so. I think we have the experts in technology in terms of certainly doing the Yang models and the modeling aspects and things to either report statistics and control them and control energy and devices. I think this is the right place to do that as well. The last thing I think that is interesting here that I don't quite know the answer to is, even if we have short-term goals and deliverables and they're done, that's great. I think having a focal point for discussing energy-related aspects of IETF is important, and whether or not that is this working group for short-term stuff or whether that is e-impact, is that venue and coordination place, I'm not quite sure. So I think it needs to be really clear what the split of responsibilities is between what happens in this working group and what happens in, say, e-impact.
Thank you. Jan.
Yes, I'd like to second what Rob just said about not being able to find the right venues. As being one of those that have submitted many drafts in this area, we had clearly seen the trouble to get proper traction in the various working groups. So I'm hoping a lot on this green working group coming up, and I will be spending quality time with it if it comes around. Then I think I would have emphasized the main problem that I see is that
there's a lot of things already present in the world. We see a lot of people demonstrating, measuring energy from their networks and stuff like that. But the problem is that when that happens, nobody can tell exactly what was measured and how it was measured or anything like that, which makes it very hard to compare, hard to trust. And also the demos you see often do not scale very well to larger networks, especially if it's a multi-vendor network. It's really hard to do this properly. And something I think that we will want to do is to be able to report energy usage per customer, and that is quite impossible today, I think. And also maybe, even if we can report energy to some extent today, we do not really report CO2 emissions, which is important. So, but if you look at the devices out there today, pretty much all devices, most devices can report something about their energy use. But what is not standardized is how you collect and combine this data. And we need to agree on what should be measured. We already have EMAN that has some good suggestions. And we need to agree on how to aggregate and store this data coming from multiple vendors and multiple systems, so that we have a common format for combining things. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Seal.
Yeah, it's Chris Seal. Well, firstly, I'm in support of this. It's just a question really about how we charter this. I agree with the short-term aims. I'm less sure about excluding the out-of-scope items. I mean, unless you want to recharter. But as well as quality of experience, I would also highlight protocols and algorithms as an area currently out of scope, but I would have thought they would have at least we should at some point address recommendations, I mean, on those.
So just to jump back at you, would you see that as a staged thing? So do some work and then recharter and pull that in, or do you think it needs to be in from day one?
That depends on how easy you regard it to recharter. So if it's relatively easy, we can do it later. If I don't think I agree with the priority list as it is. It's just the pain of rechartering.
Xiaomin.
I want to make 2 points. First one, I support forming a new working group, publish the energy efficient networking RFC. Second point, I suggest to take some security mechanism into account when developing such RFCs. Specifically speaking, why applying energy control to the networks, it must be assured that customers' data traffic won't be severely affected if some special events happen. Here, the special events include, but not limited to, protection switching, burst traffic, and line count maintenance, etc. So that's my 2 points. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stuart.
Yeah, Stu here. I am very much in favor of the goals here, but I've got a couple of concerns about assumptions that may be made and resources that may be required. So, obvious metrics are going to include things like, kilowatt hours saved. Now, let's say by putting in one piece of gear as opposed to another piece of gear, we save 1 kilowatt hour per month over an operating life of 60 months. We just save 60 kilowatt hours, right? But if putting in that piece of gear involved construction, transportation, installation, provisioning, and ultimately decommissioning costs of 100 kilowatt hours more than the other piece of gear, we don't net out. We just wasted 40 kilowatt hours, right? Plus a kilowatt hour at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in July is different from a kilowatt hour at 11 o'clock at night in February. This is not all network engineering or even computer science or even electrical engineering. The competencies required to address this are going to require expertise in thermodynamics of ecosystems, expertise in thermodynamics of economies. These are not expertises typically found within the IETF. So to get this done is going to involve recruiting from beyond our usual community. We can understand how to move these metrics around, but understanding what metrics to move around goes way beyond IETF competencies.
Thanks. Dan, no. You've had a go and we have a queue. Suresh.
Thank you. I think like this work should go on here. I think we are the right venue for doing this. We have the right expertise on the Yang side to kind of define the data models and the frameworks and so on. I think the operators did a great job collecting like the collective requirements. And I think we need to narrow it down because it all looks fascinating and somehow we need to prioritize it, which is the part that is the concern, is just changing. So you said that's in scope for the discussion. I think we should spend a little bit more effort on it after this meeting to figure out, like, what comes first, what comes next, because I think we need to get something out very, very quickly. And I think if we can start measuring things quickly, it can help us improve things. So I think that is at least my comment, like start doing something quickly. I think somebody brought up this thing about a tighter scope or not. I would like a tighter scope, get the stuff done. Rechartering is pretty straightforward. Like Mahesh will probably say yes to everything you ask after. You do the first few deliverables, so thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Hi there, Tim Chan. We have an organisation in the UK called UKRI, which funds a lot of the research-oriented work in the RNE networks that I'm involved in. They've done a lot of work on assessing what we need to do towards green activities, and they've come up with a lot of recommendations. One of them is certainly around energy measurement, such as IPMI and all the SNMP stuff that we're aware of, and the Yang stuff. So I certainly support that. I think it's great. I can't see anyone in the room that would object to that. They also, of course, cover things like looking at the cost of the cooling, the embedded carbon, etc. But I think that's out of scope of what we're doing here. But what I would say is I'm sort of seeing two sort of elements of this. One is the measurement and monitoring management side of green. And then there's a sort of a kind of an ops, a more operational side where you might come up with things like carbon aware routing, more active things that you can do. So maybe that's a separate activity, a separate working group even, and we should focus on the measurement, monitoring, management here, because that's the baselining and understanding of the position we're in and being able to control the devices, but not, I would say, to initially do the other stuff, maybe a separate working group somewhere else or something parallel.
Thank you. Ali.
Thanks. Thanks very much. I support and I also have some questions. Like one of them is to quantify, if possible, what the effort or resources it would take to implement these measurements. What does it cost to measure? Because it has to also fit into a certain budget. And also we said baselining and target value setting is out of scope, but we have to be also mindful of demonstrating the usefulness of these efforts. We said we would look at use cases, but then in use cases we have to set targets, like by measuring what is going to improve. We have to give an idea about this so that people will be willing to implement these. And for me, also one of the priority areas that this would be helpful is to tell us where in the network we should focus our optimization efforts. By measuring, we will understand, like, here is where we can focus. Should I improve BGP energy efficiency, or should I go after, I don't know, other domains like carbon aware routing, or is it worth doing this? So it's really critical to get data from the network about energy, but we also, as I said, need to focus on the costs. And during this process, I saw a gap between what the operators are asking and what the charter includes. So somehow, perhaps that's to be covered with prioritization, as Suresh was saying. Thanks.
Great. Jing Wang.
Jin from China Mobile. Thank you. Thank you to the BOF organizer for linking my green-related drafts as CAS-WG with the green BOF, and I fully support the creation of the WG, and I would be more willing to be a participant in the new working group. Thank you.
Okay, clear. Joe.
Joe Clark, Cisco. Echo, with a little bit of a Ops AWG hat on, echo what some of the things Rob said. We had work presented in Ops AWG around green. It didn't, unfortunately, that's my personal opinion, gain the traction that I wish it had. So I support the formation of this group. I think it will concentrate interest, and that's a good thing. I would also be willing to participate in it. Now, scoping, I think, and we've heard a few comments around this, a tight scope is useful for a couple of reasons. One, we didn't see a lot of E-man implementations, and I think maybe it's because regionally, even today, regionally, the need for energy management is probably not the same. I think maybe in Europe, it's higher than in the US, for example. So I think we do need to be very prescriptive of what we want vendors to implement. And I think the scope around getting the consumption, so let's measure what's out there first, and then having some basic controls for the operators to decide what they want to turn on or off. I think that's the right first approach. And then I think from there, we can iterate on what comes next. What is a higher priority? And I like, I think Tim said, some of these things might happen in other working groups. So I think this tight scope is the right answer, in my opinion. Thanks.
Stay there a moment. Joe, I just wanted to check out of that, because one of the questions here is about overlap with other working groups, or should this work be in other working groups? And I think I heard you say not ops.
I get why Ops AWG wasn't the right fit. We kind of are the dispatch for ops, and it's hard with all the work happening there to say, oh, and by the way, we're also the green working group. So I think the reason we didn't see this traction is because people are used to seeing a broader scope of topics in Ops AWG, and we've got enough, I would say, critical mass now to pull this stuff out, concentrate the interest in a working group like green, and get things happening.
Thank you. Benoit.
So I believe this is important work to be done. Now, one question I have in my head is that, assuming that we would build E-man now just with Yang, would it be a good fit for operators? So I don't want to have an answer now on this, but trying to think what needs to be done in this working group, right? First of all, we need to move to Yang. That's a given. For monitoring, this is a given. For control, I guess the time is right. I say guess because we all want to control things, but in the end, maybe shall we do it? We'll see. Now, I believe that we're going to arrive to many concepts that are defined in the E-man framework. So instead of redoing E-man, I propose that you look at the requirements first, and I think, like Suresh mentioned, only one or two use cases, because if you cover everything, you're going to have something that will be as big as E-man. And to answer the first question, if you had E-man now with Yang, would that be the right solution, a good fit? Maybe an overkill. And anyway, Yang could be augmented, right? So we could go step by steps. So maybe what you want to have in E-man minus, pruning, you know, the battery, pruning maybe the context, pruning all of these things. Now, in terms of concern, as Diane was mentioning, the carbon footprint might be just too difficult and a bridge too far. Thank you.
Thanks. See, Dan, you do get a second go.
Yes, we should keep it simple for the energy consumption and not trying to boil the ocean. I heard several proposals here that are starting to boil the ocean. I agree with you, Stuart, completely that we don't have much of required expertise within, this body, but we can provide the needed basic elements, units that the other people can use. For example, I have them. So there is like energy consumption, per bit. And this is one of the standardized units that the industry is using to calculate the other stuff. Or there has been also a proposal to do the energy efficiency rating for network equipment. You have energy efficiency rating for different tools like boilers, TVs. And if we could adopt that and say, here's the energy efficiency rating for routers or switches, some people would be able to use it for their own calculations. So I will put out a draft after this that will talk about what current units the industry is talking about, and then we can put it into the perspective what we should do. But let's take baby steps and make sure that we can provide basic metric information that the people who are trying to calculate much larger pictures, because there's also they're saying how we can do carbon usage effectiveness. We cannot provide them that, but we can provide them the needed variables that they can calculate that for the networks.
Okay, thank you. Laurent.
Yeah, Laurent Chavalier. I would like to support the points mentioned by Ali as of importance. A bit of my question is if we, for this specific group, are we in front of a special case, in the sense that do we just have an obligation of means, or do we have an obligation of results? In the sense that is it enough to just have a Yang model as a solution, or should we be able to provide certain evaluation that we have reached a utility of the use of this Yang model into saving energy? Because this is an energy efficiency working group, not just solving a function. We have an objective to make it useful.
Thank you. Just a heads up that we're winding down towards locking the queue. Elliot.
Thank you, Adrian. Okay, one or 2 points. The first of which is I support the formation of a working group. I think the charter is in pretty good shape. So I'd say, generally speaking, in the contours of what's there. I like that it's scoped pretty well. I agree with the points that Dan made in terms of if you just do the energy collection and allow for maybe the components to be accounted for of devices, that will have been a good day's work. The last point I just want to make, though, is that we've all been talking in the context of routers and switches and network devices, and that's great. And I think it's important for us to do that so we don't end up in a do as I say and not as I do moment. But we should make sure that the model that we deliver can be expressed in ways that end devices that don't speak a Yang can also use it if they so choose. Thank you.
Thank you. Ali again.
I forgot last time. So one question I have is about the deployment strategy. So can that be part of the scope of the working group? How would these metrics be deployed, and how would they scale? So we have to have a strategy of implementation. That's what I want to make sure. And for example, there are, rather than implementing all these metrics on all the network elements, would something like probes be more practical, like measurement probes of these, and that kind of different alternative thinking? How would this scale? Thanks.
Good. Georgios.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian. First of all, I would like to say that I agree with the forming of this work group, and I also agree with Dean on the things that he said about the simplicity that's needed on the measurement methodology, and as well on trying to use metrics from that are defined in other STOs like the HCTCE and the IETF 5. But one maybe important thing to also emphasize is to work on something that is also, or to show to the industry that what we are doing here is also relevant to topics that are related to life cycle assessment. So if you look to, because many industries will be actually imposed to define and provide, information about their products and about their systems from the life cycle assessment perspective. So if you look at the life cycle assessment, there are usually 4 life cycle phases. So you have the material phase, the production phase, the use operation phase, and the end of life. So we should make it clear, from the point of this framework, the life cycle assessment framework, on where we're working, such that other companies, other industries could actually use this information in their, in their context of the life cycle assessment. So in this way, we make the results more valuable to be used also for other industries.
Thank you. And I think Gian gets to be last up. Hello, Gian. Are you there? Yeah.
Sorry, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yep. Good.
Okay, sorry, I'm off mute. So I think this is a really great effort, I guess, with this BOF and now getting this work group started. And it looks like from the responses, I guess, and feedback so far, I think there's definitely a lot of interest in this work, in building this working group. I think the goals and ideas and charter, everything looks really good. Collecting metrics. I think the one piece that might be, overall, I think overall industry-wide, I think reducing the carbon footprint, I think that is definitely a big deal, I think worldwide, and it's probably like in every industry, but now in the networking industry as well. And, COPEX, but there's different ways some of these benefits can, there's, having the metrics, I think that's kind of, the big piece of it, gathering and actually getting the accurate metrics. But there's different, I guess, pieces to the puzzle and trying to, reduce the carbon footprint, which is, I guess, the overall goal. One is gathering the metrics. I think the other big one is, as operators, we're, buying our hardware from vendors. So as vendors, I think now they're, starting to have more energy efficient green hardware, green line cards, but more energy efficiency. I think that overall helps. It's really kind of across the board, across the industry, but now that's coming into like the networking realm. So, but having the metrics, it really helps actually the operator, not only, I just wanted to mention, not only for being green, but also determining what's your cost, what's your overall budget and your overall cost as far as your overall data center footprint, let's say, and how much your cost is overall, especially even if you're moving workloads from the cloud to the data to your on-prem to off-prem or vice versa. There are many ways you can actually use these metrics, and not just for reducing your carbon footprint, which is, I think that's probably the primary goal, but these metrics can be used in a lot of different ways for accounting. There's so many different accounting things that aspects that having these metrics can be extremely valuable for determining your CapEx and OpEx and how you can reduce the OpEx. So I think this is a really important work that's being done, and I really like the goals and what's been talked about so far. Thank you.
Thank you. So where does that leave us? I've been listening and trying to take some notes on what people have said. I think everybody, or maybe one or two exceptions, or perhaps it was everybody, basically said that they support this work and would like to see it go forward. So that's great. Yay. We do need to do this, and it's as Guan said, it's a big thing for the industry. It really does matter. So we do need to go forward. I also noticed that there were a couple of new things, or at least things that we did not highlight during the discussion earlier, but got highlighted in the commentary here. Security, obviously, if you control power, then hopefully we worry about security of that. But also there was a number of higher level issues. What's the quality of experience or the impact on that, or comparing power usage and what you actually get out of it, and whether we go into the carbon aspects of the energy, and whether we go into even other things not directly related to the use phase, so embedded carbon, for instance, or life cycle in general. What's the cost of measuring? So that was kind of new stuff for me. And then we have the rest, the basics, the control parts and framework that we did talk about earlier. I don't know, Adrian, at least for me, it's, it seems fairly clear way forward. The only thing that's for me is a little bit open is to what extent everything on this slide is, in phase one, or if something should be dropped. Maybe that's a thing that we can discuss on the list, or, converse with the ADs and so on. Any thoughts, Adrian?
Yeah, for me, it was the higher layer issues that were slightly unclear whether they would be in the charter, in the first version of the charter, as a long-term goal that we're keeping an eye on, or something that can be added at a recharter. My experience is that a recharter is really cheap, but Mahesh's opinion may vary because he's the one who has to do the work. So I wouldn't be scared that your favorite high layer issue has been left out today. If you do the work hard and clearly on the tools, then I think it was Tim who was talking about the distinction between the tools and the use of the tools. And I think if we get the tools done quickly and well, maybe with an eye to how we'd use them, then we can come back later and start talking about the actual use.
Yeah, and I'm also wondering how to go forward for the rest of the few remaining minutes here. I think, to me at least, it was fairly clear what the BOF was saying, or what you guys were saying. There was pretty wide support, so I'm not sure we need to ask that traditional question, do you think we should create a working group? I think that was fairly clear. One thing that we have not gotten, of course, good view of is like who would actually be working on. So that might be a thing to ask about, just to confirm that, of course we all care about this topic, but maybe only some fraction of us actually wants to work on it. And so it would be nice to understand if people are willing to work on that. Shall we make a actual poll on the tool? Yeah, excellent. So now you can respond on the tool if you are willing to be involved actually doing the work. I have to go and answer myself too.
And let's be clear, doing the work does not mean signing up to the mailing list. It means at the very minimum, reviewing drafts proactively before adoption calls and working group last calls, and ideally contributing text and joining in the discussions in a constructive way. It's sort of settling down now, and well, it's still going, but I'm seeing almost 50 yeses out of 136 in the room, which sounds like a pretty high number to me.
It's probably better than I've seen in any BOF ever, so Yeah, we all want to save the planet. That's great. What else? So we asked the AD to step in and tell us what the real deal is, or?
I was going to answer this question, hopefully. But to the question of work group formation, I think it was fairly clear, as you said, with the exception of maybe one or two reservations in terms of what the charter was. I don't think so there was any concern or why the work group should not be formed. So I would say a resounding yes, as far as what I heard in terms of formation of the working group. I think the scope, no one really said this. They were pretty much happy with it. Same thing with the charter proposal. At least we seem to have agreement on what could be a good starting point. So that's really helpful. I do realize that, as you said, there were a couple of high-level points that aren't quite there. And personally, I'm not averse to modifying the charter and bring in new items as we get a few of the items off our plate. So certainly do encourage people to engage and say yes, they want to see more stuff. We just want to make sure that we at least get some of the initial proposals drafts made into RFCs and published. So I would, I think I have a fairly positive feel from this part myself. The rest of it, I think, will really depend on tweaking the charter proposal and getting approval for it. So thank you. I like the energy.
Thanks. So that's it for today. And the next steps, we will discuss the details on the mailing list and with Mahesh and ISG and the rest of the community. So thanks a lot, everybody.